Hello, everyone, and welcome back. We took a little bit of a hiatus, as you may have noticed, over the last few weeks there. Originally, I thought we were going to be back on the 3rd. I was mistaken in that. It was actually going to be a week longer that we were off the air. If you haven't seen them already, the other podcasts on the network are already up and available. They started back on the 7th, so all the new content from all the different podcasts are up and running. Now, as always, I'm your host, Killian Hobbs, news editor for the Being Libertarian family of publications and the managing editor for think-liberty.com. You can check into any of our websites, beinglibertarian.com, think-liberty.com, or rationalstandard.com. You can follow us on pretty much every form of social media that's out there. If we're not on a form of social media, just reach out to us through one of them and let us know what you'd like to see us on. And more importantly than any of that, I'm your host here at this show, Coffee Shop Philosophy. So what I wanted to start off with for today's episode, since we're kind of into the new year, getting things settled in, all that stuff, is just a little bit of housekeeping stuff, I guess you could say. Even though it's just me recording audio, there's not much to really clean up in the truest sense. And we do have the flagship podcast for the main announcements and everything else, but there's still a few things I wanted to sort out and get out to you here. So to start off, you can now follow me directly on Facebook. If you go to Facebook, you can actually search Killian Hobbs-author. You will find that I've set up a page there. So on top of the articles that I write for Being Libertarian and for think-liberty.com, there'll also be little insights and different things and updates on other projects that I'm going to be starting throughout 2019 that I'll post little updates to and things like that on that page. So in addition to all the other social media that you follow us on, you can also follow me directly there. And another big announcement that I do have is for next week's episode, I will be having our first guest on. I'm not going to go into the details about what we're discussing and the content there. It's simply just going to say that it's going to be an interesting episode for sure, so definitely make sure to tune in. It'll be the same time every Thursday. But like I said, I do have a guest on, and if you're either interested in being a guest or are interested in seeing me be a guest on your show, perhaps, then you can actually send an email to me directly at Killian.Hobbs, so KILLIAN.HOBBS at beinglibertarian.email. I know most people think that it's going to be a .com, but like I've said before, our main contact point is a .email. It's a tech thing that I just don't ask about. So I've mentioned the Facebook page. I've mentioned the podcasts all being back up and live, which is always a good thing to see. Some great episodes came out this week, particularly the Liberty Bites episode that was out on Monday. That was really interesting. If you haven't listened to that one yet, then by all means go check it out. The Liberty Bite episode, I think, is 9 or 10 minutes long, something like that. So pretty quick, easy listen, but there's always amazing stuff packed into that short little period of time, which is definitely better than some of the long-winded DMT rants that you might get out of your average Joe Rogan podcast. Nothing against Joe Rogan, but I don't need to sit and listen to him talk about drugs for 4 hours with random guests. Moving along, one other thing to note is that on the shop there is new merch, and we're going to continuously be putting out new merch. There's no set schedule for it. It's pretty much just whenever Vinny comes up with a great idea for a new design, he's going to put something out there for everybody. So definitely go check that out and keep an eye out for any kind of updates that you might see there as well. If I haven't mentioned it already, do please go to the websites and hit the little subscribe bell for new articles that are coming through. One thing that a fan of my writing anyway had mentioned to me is that sometimes when the articles are coming out, because of the category that they fall in, they don't show up towards the top of the page. You have to kind of scroll down, or you have to almost search for it if you didn't see it or you're exploring the site itself. But if you do hit that little subscribe bell, then A, you make me happy, which I think is something everyone should try to accomplish. And you don't miss any of the content that we bring out on any of those 3 websites. Now, with all of that said, I'm going to dive right back into today's topic. Now, for today's episode, one of the things that kind of struck out at me that I figured would be worth talking about is, I'll start off with a little experience that I had. Now, a few months back, my main thing, as you know, every month I do something new. It's something that I put out both as a challenge for anyone that's listening and something that I do to kind of challenge myself so that I've got something new that I'm learning or diving into or just trying to improve myself on each month on top of everything else that I do. The ever-growing to-do list that never seems to finish itself, but it keeps life interesting, keeps things busy, which is always good for a person like me. So with the monthly thing that I do, one of the things for this month is kind of getting a few things back on track because of the holiday season and everything else, especially considering that I work the retail industry, so we were packed beyond imagination pretty much every day in that tail end of December on top of all of the holiday things. And from the personal side, I think I have something around 7 or 8 different birthdays that I have to deal with, myself included. My birthday actually fell on the 27th. I think I might have mentioned in the last episode. It's been a few weeks and I don't usually go back and listen to myself because I don't like the sound of my own voice. I put up with it when I'm doing some of the editing on the podcast, but otherwise, if I can avoid listening to myself, I do. How you guys bear with my voice, I don't know. I've heard some compliments about it, but I just don't get it. I can't stand my own voice. Anyway, that's a side note, neither here nor there. But one of the things, like I said, for this month is just kind of putting that time towards refocusing on a lot of the things that I wanted to refocus on. So picking up on my regular reading habits. I'm a pretty avid reader in general, but I have fallen slack over the last few weeks, of course. And the other one was getting to the gym. Now, everyone and their mother for the New Year resolution thing does getting to the gym, but I had set up myself to go to the gym pretty regularly, but around, I want to say probably October or so, I started to kind of fall off of that bandwagon, and then obviously the constant parties, and there's drinks, and there's food, and you're not even going to want to look at a scale to see what the damage was after everything's said and done. But I went to try to go to the gym just shortly after, and I couldn't get in there. The place was just completely packed, and it clued into me after the fact. I knew why it was going to be packed. It was filled up with all of the New Year, New Me people. Everyone that said, all right, this is the year I'm going to be fit. This is the year I'm going to make it happen. The people that, they buy the year gym membership and they go until maybe middle of February, as far as end of March. And then maybe, 1 or 2 of those people survive as continuous gym goers and everyone else kind of falls back into their normal routines. I should have known that it was going to be packed like that, but something about it, I just didn't clue in to think that, hey, maybe just after work on a Monday, the first Monday in January, maybe that's not the best day to try to fight the crowd at the gym. But it did make me think a little bit here. A lot of people set their New Year's resolution or a birthday resolution or something like that. And by setting that like once a year kind of resolution thing, not a lot of people are truly successful in it when you look at the entire year. Again, well, it's fresh in people's minds and they've got that little burst of motivation that comes from, it's a new year, this is when it has to happen sort of thing. A lot of people, they get really heavy into the idea, and then it just they lose the motivation and it just kind of filters out and they settle back into their old habits and their old routines. Now, one of the things that I jokingly but not jokingly say is, don't have New Year's resolutions, have Monday resolutions. And the reason I say that is because if you fall off track, fuck it, pick it up back again on Monday. That gives you 52 chances a year to try again versus just 1 if it's your New Year's resolution. Now, like I said, I usually say that in more of a joking manner than anything, but there's a lot of truth in giving yourself that kind of ability to course correct. Now, when it comes to course correction, that's kind of the theme of things that I want to dive into in the course of this episode. There was another interesting article I was reading actually talking about the habit of course correction. So in the article, what they start off with is an example of a pilot. Now, when a person is flying a plane, I don't know if anyone who listens to this has a pilot's license. I don't, but I can read up on the topic well enough to know that this is a part of what they have to do, even if I can't do it myself. One of the things that pilots constantly have to deal with is turbulence, air fluctuations, etc., etc. There's tons of variables that are constantly changing while they're operating the plane. One of the stories that they told was of a plane that was off course by something like 0.1% of a degree from its initial trajectory. So a very small deviation in its overall trajectory, where it was supposed to land and supposed to be. Now, the pilots, they didn't check as often as they should. They didn't double check things. They left a lot of it to autopilot because the plane was supposed to go to, I believe it was a base set up on Antarctica for scientists to do research. Now, the plane being off course a little bit, it ended up with a fatal crash. What ended up happening was they got the notification that the plane was starting to rapidly reach ground level. And they had no idea what was going on because the snow and the ice made it look like they were flying over flat terrain, when in reality they were flying towards a mountain. And because it was completely sheer covered ice and looked the exact same, from the plane they couldn't tell that they were about to crash into the side of a mountain. And by the time they realized that they could, it was too late for them to course correct. Now, in normal aviation, when you have like commercial flights or private jets, whatever else have you, because they're flying over more iffy terrain, or they're flying near and over cities, and they're even covering vast distances where a 0.1 degree deviation means landing in a completely different country, they have to course correct literally thousands of times throughout the course of the flight. So the second they realize they're off by, 0.1 of a degree, and they've been off by that 0.1 of a degree for all of 3 minutes, they have to make a point of doing the counter adjustment to swing back on course. Same thing for when they're dealing with turbulence and other environmental factors that end up moving the plane off course while it's in air. So literally thousands of times throughout the course of a flight. And you could call that a domestic flight even. They have to make that many course corrections and checks and balances to make sure that the plane is actually going to get to the destination it's supposed to. They are constantly making these little corrections. And some of it's just the pilots being able to read the gauges and everything else and know what they're doing there. Some of it involves liaisoning with ground control, air traffic control, etc., to read their headings to be able to make the adjustments as soon as any deviation is noticed. What's interesting with this idea, and it's something that the article went into a little bit further in depth, but something that, it's something that kind of rang really true when I was reading through it, was the fact that the concept of continuous course correction is something that a lot of people lack when it comes to their own lives. So New Year's resolutions, I think, are a perfect example. People will take a New Year's resolution as a chance to course correct. They'll see something major in their life. Maybe it's a poor behavior of theirs. Maybe it's a, something like getting back to the gym and getting healthy because they realize that they've let themselves put on a few too many pounds or something like that. What'll happen is they'll set these resolutions and they'll say to themselves, all right, this is me course correcting. I have to get back on track. But if a pilot course corrected only once, then the plane would still end up off course. It's literally multiple times per hour, per minute, some cases, of constantly correcting course that allows the plane to actually reach its destination. We're no different. When we're actually, not to use excessively flowery language, I say I don't like flowery language, but I find myself almost forced into using it to really articulate my points. I don't know why I keep trapping myself like this. I really have to look at a way to stop myself from doing that. But anyway, when we're on the flight path or the trajectory of life itself, just like the pilot, we need to make continuous course corrections to make sure we actually get where we want to go. We can have all of the planning and all of the strategy, and we can take all the time and kind of set an idea of everything that we want to do and everything we want to accomplish and set up a 45-point plan of how we're going to get from A1 to Z47. But if we're not constantly course correcting, we're just trying to hammer the plan away and we're not ready to make those adjustments to stay on course, we're not going to get to the destination that we want to arrive at. We are the pilots of our own lives in this sense. And just like the pilots that were used in the example, we need to constantly be course correcting to make sure that we actually hit the target we want to hit. Going back to the people at the gym there, I could tell, looking through the window, because for some reason they always put the treadmills and the ellipticals and the stationary bikes right up against the window. That way, everyone that's running there, they can stare outside, and anyone that's going by, they can see a whole bunch of people sweating and moaning and feeling in pain while they're running, because somehow that's an advertisement to go exercise. Well, I'll never understand it. I don't even begin to try to understand why they all do that. I'm sure there's some key marketing reason, either for the customers or for people that walk by, that makes that seem like a good idea. But I look at that and I just think of the Simpsons episode where Bart and another girl, I can't remember the character's name, are just standing outside of it, just eating ice cream, looking inside and laughing. That's pretty much all I can think of when I think about the treadmills on the at the windows in a gym. But at any rate, I was looking through, seeing that everything had a person on it and everyone was trying to run and all that, but nobody seemed particularly motivated to be there. They seemed like they went there because they told themselves they were going to, not because they were like, all right, I want this. This is what I need. This is what I want. This is where I want to go. Nobody looked like they had that kind of oomph to them while they were exercising. I'm sure there was maybe like one or two people in there that actually did, but it was pretty easy to tell that a good chunk of the people there were the New Year's resolution types. They were just there because they set a resolution, and that was the whole reason for them being there. They told themselves they were going to do it. They went to do it, and they're likely not going to course correct when it comes time for that day they can't make it to the gym because something came up in life, or the next day, or the next day. And then eventually they'll just be one of the countless people out there that have the gym memberships but don't actually go. And, it's okay to be that kind of person. If you sign up, like a lot of people who sign up for the gym, they're hopeful for actually getting somewhere and accomplish something with it. But obviously, if you can't go, then at that point you need to either admit it and cancel the membership, or decide if that's something you actually want to do and course correct. But like I've already explained with the previous example, only course correcting once isn't going to do it. And that goes for any type of plan you might have. A great example of this was when I first started off with Think Liberty here, and we were doing a bunch of the planning cycle to get everything going. When I was doing when I first started writing articles and getting things set up for the website, it became apparent to me that we didn't have a full cohesive team or team management system for the writing side. We had a lot of talented writers that would produce works when they could, and they would just kind of send it in. There was people that would, they'd take a look over it, read it, edit it, and then get it loaded up to the site. But there wasn't anything as specific or as organized as a schedule, a specific team, groups for it, chats for it, any of the human resource aspect where, there's constantly dialogue between the team to come up with ideas to generate content and put things together, so on and so forth. That stuff didn't really seem to exist in the framework before I got there. And it's nothing against the people that had worked on the content before. There's tons of great content on the site that came in well before I started. I'm sure a lot of you became fans of the Think Liberty brand well before I became involved back in the tail end of June of last year. That said, though, from the back end side, there was a lot of work that went into building things up and a lot of getting things together. And if my approach had just been, all right, I've gathered all the names of the people that have put out great work before and I put them in a chat and go. If that was all I did, the website wouldn't be, we wouldn't be where we are with the amount of content we're bringing in, the quality of it. And honestly, I don't think that I'd have the amazing team that I have if that was the case. By constantly course correcting, coming up with new ways to, keep everybody engaged, to communicate with each other, to come up with ideas, bouncing ideas off of each other, and just kind of constantly keeping at it, where if we see something's deviating and something's going off course, that, we take a look and we go, okay, this isn't working, let's get back on track. And making those almost instantaneous and sometimes imperceivable little changes to get things back on the course we want it to. That's what's helped bring everything that we do, not just at the Think Liberty side, but also being libertarian and even myself just at work in general. It's what gets those things done and gets us to where we need to be. And the same thing could be seen in the amazing work that's done on the social media side, the great work that's done with the multimedia department and all of the stuff that they put out. And even though there's not a conscious, specific mental note of constantly course correcting, there's always eyes on what's going on, so that the second there's a deviation from the plan of where we want to go, we're making the corrections and adjustments we need to make so that we stay on course. Similar to one of the things I explained, not the last episode, but one of the episodes before, where I was talking about Jordan Belford's 4 steps of success, or 4 parts of success, where he talks about, vision and strategy and belief and all that sort of stuff. One of the big things that he spoke about with that is that the people that are successful do those things without being conscious of the fact that they're doing them. That's one of the key things. You can see that with people who are successful when it comes to accomplishing their plans, that even if they're not making a specific mental note to constantly course correct, they are constantly course correcting to make sure that they stay on plan. Whenever there's a deviation or a change in life or anything like that that sets their plans off or puts them off to the side or changes the timelines, whatever else, they adapt, they change, and they get back on course. If they see, hey, okay, I'm falling behind on this because I haven't done this yet. Okay, so I'll cut this out, and then add that time back in so that I can get back on track to the timeline I wanted for that particular part of my plan. Small little things that have major results in the end. It's the difference between landing at base and hitting the side of a mountain. So when it comes to New Year's resolutions and things like that, I strongly advocate taking on Monday resolutions instead. Instead of making it so that you set yourself up of, this is the thing I'm going to accomplish throughout the entirety of the year. The one hand, setting up so that you're only doing one thing all year is kind of, I hate to say it to everybody who does the New Year's resolution thing, but it's kind of weak to say that you're only going to do one thing for the whole year. You got 365 days in order to tackle whatever idea or whatever concept or whatever plan of action you want to tackle. Setting it so that you only have one thing that you're worrying about, that just doesn't, that just doesn't seem like a lot, at least in my eyes. I'm also called a workaholic by pretty much everybody I deal with, but it just seems like one of those things where you'd be better off giving yourself Monday resolutions. That way, if you do fail on something, then again, you do have the time to course correct. And of course, if you actually have set yourself up on something that you can accomplish before the year is over, then on the next Monday, you can give yourself something else. It's a lot like what I do with the new thing every month. Now, it's not the same as, say, a New Year's resolution where it's some singular big change you want to make in your life. The monthly challenge that I put out is a little different, of course, simply because it's mainly focused around learning or improving one particular aspect. And I design it in kind of a way where if it's not something that jives well with me, then I've given myself a specific drop-off time for it. But in the same vein, that still comes in with the course correction idea. You still have to approach it from the perspective of, okay, this is my plan, and if it goes wrong, here is how I will watch it. I don't know, for those of you out there, I'm not sure how many of you ever come across a concept known as smart planning. If you haven't seen that before, smart planning is a particular method of setting up your goals so that you have specific information and ways that you're going to understand your progression with the goal. That way, course correction is easier, planning is easier, time management's easier, etc., etc. It's one of those silly little acronyms that ends up working out quite well. So the first one to it is specific. It can't be some generic goal like, I want to be thin. It'd have to be something like, I'm going to lose X pounds. And I'm going to lose X% body fat, or something to that nature. The M is measurable. Is it measurable? How are you going to measure it? Now the A, and it should be noted that when it comes to SMART goals, there's no specific acronym for it. There's quite a few different examples of what a SMART goal can look like. But the A is usually either attainable or acceptable or action-oriented. I usually go for attainable because I find with a lot of goals that can be one of the biggest barriers when it's just a pie-in-the-sky idea. Is the goal you have in mind actually attainable? And if so, you can move on to the next portions, which would be whether or not it is relevant. So this goal that you've set up, does it serve a purpose? Is this just something that you just came up with for the sake of coming up with it to have some kind of goal to accomplish? Or can you actually list the things you're going to gain by having completed this particular task? The last one, of course, is the T, which can be, depending on the version you're using, either time-based or trackable. So if you use the trackable version, then usually your M has to be different for either meaningful or I think it's motivational in some version, where you list that kind of information out. But I usually go off of time-based so that I actually include the timeline of the goal that I'm trying to accomplish. That way I can plan everything from today to the end of the timeline to get the whole goal going. So that's just a random tool that you can use that's kind of off to the side and doesn't really tie into the rest of what I was saying. It's something that you can use for making your goals more specific, and just as a general tool, it's useful as far as course correction is concerned, which again was kind of the topic of the episode today. But like I said, the main takeaway, if there is a takeaway that you can have from the episode today, is that it's okay if you falter from your plans. It's okay if, life happens and it gets in the way of you trying to accomplish this big and overarching goal that you might have set in front of yourself, so long as you know that you can course correct and get back on track. If you let every misstep get in the way of actually reaching the end of the goal, then it's no different than the pilots that hit the mountain. You're not going to get where you want to get by treating a single stumble as you just failing and it being over. If you fail, you stop, you get back up, you go at it again, you course correct, you change the things you need to change to get to your goal. And if you're not willing to give your goals that kind of oversight or make those changes that you need to make, then you need to ask yourself if it was a goal that you were really serious about pursuing in the first place. That's about everything that I got for you today on the first episode of Coffee Shop Philosophy for 2019. I definitely have tons of great content planned out for you for the rest of the year. Before you think that I'm some kind of crazy planner, no, I haven't planned out 52 episodes worth of the show already. But I do have some ideas of things that I definitely want to tackle this year through the show here. As I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, you can follow us on all the different forms of social media. You can check out all three websites, beinglibertarian.com, think-liberty.com, and rationalstandard.com. You can, as of now, follow me on my author page that's on Facebook there. Again, it's Killian Hobbs-author, or if you're searching by usernames, just Killian Hobbs author, all one word there. And last but not least, as always, every month at the first of the month, and I think I'm going to do this at the first in every month going forward because it does seem to generate some traction. From the last episode, as I mentioned, I only had 2 people who reached out to me regarding having actually participated in the challenge, but I've heard now from a couple of people that they're going to continue this into January and then hopefully February, March, and the rest of the year thereafter. But if you are interested in participating in the monthly challenge of picking up something new, going at it as best you can, and then seeing how you ended up at the end of the month and starting something new the next month over, then like I mentioned, you can message me directly either through the killian.hobbs@beinglibertarian.email address. You can send me a message with what your plan for the month is or what you want to try to tackle, everything like that. And I can even try to help you out if it's something that I can help you out with. Like if you're looking for resources or information on whatever the topic is, things like that. I've got tons of, just through my years of scrolling through the internet and doing different projects here and there, I've amassed quite a little database of places to go to get sources of information and which ones to trust and not trust and so on and so forth. So if there's something like that that I'm able to assist with, then by all means, I like to be hands-on like that where I can help people. And at the end of the month, of course, anyone that I hear from, I will give you a little shout out in the show here to, give you congratulations for picking something up and sticking with it for the whole month. If you don't like the email method and you prefer the social media method, you can reach out to me through the new author page that I've already mentioned, I think twice now. Not going to go through it again. You can rewind if you want to hear that part. But obviously you can just send a message to the page there as well. And then, similar through the email, I can give you any help that I can to try to help you, just kind of get these extra things going in your life. As always, if you liked what you heard and you'd like to hear more, I'll see you again next week.